I would like to call this Planning Commission meeting to order this Wednesday, June the 28th. May I have a roll call, please?
Chairwoman Amanda Jackson Denmark.
Here.
Vice Chairman Charlie Whitmore.
Here.
Commissioner Kathleen Duncan. Here. Commissioner Rich Delcor.
Here.
Commissioner Jason Stewart.
Here.
Commissioner Jim Flynn.
Here.
Commissioner Lydia DePaul.
Here. Okay, notice regarding adjournment, the Planning Commission will not hear new items after 9:30 unless authorized by a majority vote of the commission members present. Items which have not been heard before 9:30 may be continued to the next regular meeting or a special meeting date if determined by the commission members. Notice regarding public comment. Every member of the public who is recognized to speak shall address the chairman and in speaking avoid disrespect to the commission, staff, or other members of the meeting. State your name and address when speaking for the record. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. Do we have public comments tonight? May I have an adoption of the agenda?
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Civility pledge. We pledge to build a stronger and more prosperous community by advocating for civil engagement, respecting others and their viewpoints, and finding solutions for the betterment of the town of Bluffton. May I have an adoption of the minutes from May 24th, please?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we have no public comments, we have no old business, so we'll go straight to new business. Lakes at New Riverside, Phase 5 and 6, it's a street naming application, so Dan, take it away.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chairman. This is a street naming application. It is Lakes at New Riverside Phases 5 and 6. It's a request by John Paul Moore of Thomas and Hutton on behalf of Pritchard Farms LLC for approval of the street naming application. The applicant is requesting approval of the following street names to be used for future development of the Lakes at New Riverside Phases 5 and 6. Accepted road names are Blue Pond Way, Streeter Road, Park Hill Driveway, Streeter Road, Marion Lake Driveway, Streeter Road, and there was one denied road name, and that was Blue Pond Drive. On April 12, 2023, the Town of Bluffton DRC approved a preliminary development plan for the Lakes at New Riverside Phases 5 and 6. It's a 144 single-family residential lot development. Town staff is currently awaiting final development plan submittal. This street naming application provides potential names for one road to be built as part of the development. Street naming application was reviewed at the May 24, 2023 meeting of the DRC with 11 designations of the 3 requested road names approved and 1 designation of the requested road names denied. Planning Commission actions as granted by the powers and duties set forth in section 226C5 of the Unified Development Ordinance. The Planning Commission has the authority to take the following actions. You can approve the application as submitted, approve the application with conditions, or deny the application as submitted by the applicant. And these are the criteria that are used. Staff recommendation, town staff finds the 11 designations of the 3 proposed road names as acceptable and meets requirements of Article 3 of the UDO as stated above. So staff recommendation is that staff recommends that the requirements of section 315.3 have been met and recommends that the Planning Commission approve the following 11 designations for the new street names. I won't go through them again.
Thank you. Does the applicant wish to speak? Good.
Why did they deny Blue Pond Drive? I'm just curious.
I don't know. We bounce these off of IT and they do it off the county and Hilton Island, and sometimes we get some weird responses.
I'll entertain a motion if no one has any further comments.
I move we accept the names as presented, the 11 names as presented. Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Okay, item number 2, midpoint street naming. Dan? Yeah.
I was just going to say.
I think fairly similar. This is a street naming application for Midpoint at New Riverside. And it's a request by Pulte Homes Company on behalf of Walcam Land Group LLC for approval of the street naming application. The applicant is requesting approval of the following street names to be used for the future development of Midpoint at New Riverside. I can name each of the street names if you want me to. I can come back to it if you ask me to, so we can go forward. But what it amounts to is 17 names were approved with no conflict. 2 names would require a street type descriptor, meaning lane, road, boulevard. And then there would be a potential conflict with Sea Glass Lane and with Coral Hayes Drive if it was used in conjunction with Coral Cove Court. On May 15, 2023, Town Development Review Committee approved the preliminary development plan for Pulte Midpoint Phase 1. Town staff is currently awaiting final development plan submittal. This street naming application provides potential names for 6 new road names to be built as part of the overall phase development. The street naming application was reviewed at the June 7, 2023 meeting of the DRC with 17 of the 22 requested road names approved with no conflict. And the Planning Commission actions are the same as they were with the last presentation. These are the criteria. And staff recommendation is finding as town staff finds that 17 of the 22 proposed new street names are acceptable and meet the requirements of Article 3 of the UDO as stated above. Staff finds that the requirements of Section 315.3 have been met and recommends that the Planning Commission approve the following 17 accepted road names. And there they are on the screen for you. And I'll open it up for any questions you may have.
Can you go back to that, please?
Yes, sir.
So you pulled out Sea Glass Lane and Coral Hayes Drive?
That's correct. This is staff's recommendation. We've recommended, and they only need 6 street names.
7,
7.
I think.
Okay, 7.
I'm just curious if you had a meeting with the other Midpoint homeowners to discuss.
All the names.
Inside joke.
It's not funny, it's too soon.
They're laughing.
Too soon.
Question. I'm
Yes.
surprised you agreed to 3 and 13.
I was looking for that.
Coral Cove Road and Coral Cove Court. They were recommended as with no conflict, so they do
But
seem
if
to
you
be.
go back
Suggest them to pick one. If they're
If you go,
gonna pick one, pick one.
well, yeah,
Don't pick both of them.
yeah. Because we know how that feels in our development where you have anchor, different streets.
Right.
And this is the same thing, Coral Cove. If you go back to your criteria, I bet it would say you can't do that.
Well, why don't
So
we
you
just,
can make a motion to say that.
Let's do that, let's do
Okay,
that.
what do you want to?
No, well, I don't know if the developer prefers one or the other.
Would you like to speak?
Do you care about which one we're out?
I do not.
Okay.
Then just,
Okay.
Dan, take one of them off.
I was going to say, you could make a motion.
when you make the motion.
Okay, all right.
Just
Remove
remove
one or the
13.
other.
Well, are we ready for motion?
It's everybody ready for motion?
I move that we accept town's recommendations with the exception of 13 Coral Cove Court.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. So you get the road, not the court.
You realize the developer that named those roads you just picked?
I know, he's sitting right there.
He said it again. Okay.
But he knows I said it with love.
Okay.
be nice.
Item 3, wetland impact for parcels 12A, 12B, and 12C, development plan, a request by Nathan Long of Thomas Hutton on behalf of Jake Reed of University Investments LLC for approval of a preliminary development plan.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This is a preliminary development plan application, wetland impacts of parcels 12A, 12B, and 12C. It is a request by Nathan Long of Thomas and Hutton on behalf of Jake Reed of University Investments LLC for approval of a preliminary development plan. The project proposes partial wetland filling of approximately 0.56 acres to allow crossings for future road alignments. The 58-acre subject property is zoned Buckwalter Planned Unit Development and is located south and adjacent to Bluffton Parkway. The development plan application is not associated with an approved master plan. This is the subject property on an aerial. This is subject property that's shown in our Bluffton Explorer. This application is for preliminary development plan located within the Buckwalter PUD and is subject to standards set forth in the Buckwalter PUD development agreement and concept plan. Per section 2D19 of the Buckwalter PUD, infrastructure serving the community on-site and off-site is exempt from initial master plan approval process, and that's why there's no need for a master plan to be associated with this development application. The applicant's stated purpose for this application is to fill the wetland crossing prior to expiration of the permit to provide connection for future development. I believe the permit expires June 30th of 2024, so almost exactly a year from now. The purpose of the partial fill is to allow crossings for future road alignments interior to the parcels, which will reduce the number of cars traveling on Bluffton Parkway and allow them to comply with the approved access management plan for the parkway. Staff comments on the preliminary development plan were reviewed at the May 17, 2023 meeting of the Development Review Committee. On May 30, 2023, the applicant provided a response to comments and updated the site development plans to address the comments provided, and all of that was included in your planning commission packet. This is an exhibit provided by the applicant showing the general location of the proposed earth road that they are utilizing to do the wetland infill. So I've got 3 slides in a row. I don't know how well they read, but this is the grading and drainage plan that was submitted. What does this look like? This is Bluffton Parkway. Apparently I'm not able to use that. Bluffton Parkway is to the north of this. To the left of the screen is coming in the entrance for the haul road that will be used. And this coincides with the L apartments that are under construction across the street. This is also a designated location for a signal per the Bluffton Parkway Access Management Plan. I have a slide of that if you want to see it. It's an additional slide in the packet. So as you come in, there's a dry basin that's being proposed along that curve. Then the haul road heads eastward, parallel with Buckwalter Parkway. This is picking up where it just left off on the last slide. That is the first infill wetland area. After that is 2 more dry basins for fill dirt. Beyond that, the 2 lines that are running up and down represent the town-owned extension of Innovation Drive. The town is preparing, the request is preparing an encroachment permit. We're putting that together, and that is the one condition that I've attached to this that I'll get to, but it's an encroachment permit written where the town is allowing the improvements that they're proposing here to happen across our property as well as the property that they own.
Does the town have an issue with that at all?
We don't. We've just maybe been dragging our feet a little bit on putting together the language there. But it'll be a condition at final development plan submittal. So we've got plenty of time for that. And this is the 3rd extension of it. This is continuing eastward. We're almost over to Buckwalter Parkway at this point. You can see the corner of it in the upper right. This is where the 2nd location for wetland infill occurs. And it'll end in a cul-de-sac that's just that very last little cut sheet down in the lower right corner. Planning Commission shall consider the criteria set forth in Section 310.3A of the UDO in assessing an application for a preliminary development plan. These are the criteria. They were included in the staff report. Planning Commission action. Planning Commission has the authority to take the following action. They can approve the application as submitted by the applicant. They can approve the application with conditions, table the application, or deny the application as submitted by the applicant. Should the Planning Commission choose to approve the application with conditions, town staff finds that the following conditions should be met prior to final development plan approval to be in accordance with requirements of Section 310.3A. and that is one condition. It's an approved encroachment permit allowing the applicant to perform work within the town-owned Innovation Drive extension property will be required prior to final development plan approval. That's what I was alluding to, the language that we're putting together. And we'll open it up for questions, and the applicant is here to answer any questions as well.
Anybody have any questions for Dan or about the applicant? Any questions for him? For the applicant?
Thank you, Dan. Good evening, Madam Chairman, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Nathan Long. I'm with Thomas & Hutton. As Dan mentioned, we also have University Investments back here behind me. So the purpose of this was the wetland permit expires in June of 2020. So we came to the town and explained that we have these wetland crossings that we'd like to do. And any final development plan would utilize those same wetland crossings that we're proposing. You may recall a while back, the applicant came forward with an annexation of some property to the south that ended up getting denied, right? And then there's also the fact that the Bluffton Parkway realignment has not ultimately been determined to the east of the property. So at this time, we're just trying to act to get the wetlands filled before the permit expires. As Dan mentioned, we lined up with the access management plan. There is a future or a development permit currently under review by the town at the same location there. So we're trying to limit the disturbance and use that same access. We're working with the stormwater ordinance. We've got a soil testing and report that's currently ongoing, which we'll work forward in the final development plan. And that's basically it. We're happy to address any questions.
Thank you. Dan, just for reference, can you put up the access plan?
I can.
Kind of see where it's aligning.
Yep, that is it. And what I have circled in yellow is the actual, that's the entrance that they're talking about. That's opposite of the old apartment.
Sure.
Does anyone have any questions to start?
The only other thing I would mention is the access management plan. You can see it there. It's got that dashed line for basically representing like a frontage road, right? So these wetland crossings also align with what that frontage road would be as well, that will connect back over toward Hampton Lake.
Start. Go to your issues, questions. Jason?
I think the hard part for me is that there is no master plan, and this is sitting on the precipice of, because it's serving public infrastructure, that's why this is allowed to happen without a master plan. And as it currently is proposed as a dirt road that doesn't connect, it's not really actually serving the public infrastructure. I understand that at some point those wetland crossings will be used, but we're talking about making environmental impacts off of something that's, we don't know what the plan is. And so I'm having a little hard time with that, and the significance of, it's not even just coming down from a central access point and hitting these two wetlands. It's coming from the far side and then traveling all this way. So it's even greater impact than what would be necessary just to achieve the means of the wetland impacts, to do that before it expires. So.
All right, Rich, any first thoughts?
No, I think it's been addressed, but when I looked at the thing with the trees, I think there were some significant trees. I think in the DRC response, it said they changed Basin 4 and 5 to try to save those trees, but I don't think I got those new drawings. Is that correct?
The drawings that we're looking at here are the new drawings. That comment was based on the old drawing. It's a 50-foot setback, so they had to to change the shapes of their detention ponds. And the 50-foot requirement, you initially had a 25.
Yeah, that's right. And then there also the ponds to the east were adjusted for any larger trees.
Yeah, because I was seeing some
northern
big live
pond.
oaks.
Mike, if you're going to speak, come up so that the public can hear you in the microphone, please.
Yeah, the northern pond that you see there on that one, that's where the bigger trees were, kind of near that wetland buffer, so we pulled that pond in.
And thereby saving those live oaks that were
Yes, sir.
big ones? Okay. Thank you.
Jim?
I guess my question is, and again, it's maybe not as relevant, but I just a question with regards to maybe the future plans of this as well. What is the intent? I mean, again, I know that's come up before, and I wanted to bring it up one more time and ask, just if you don't mind asking,
Well, yeah, I mean, it's Bugwalter Commons, I believe is what it's labeled, so it could be a number of things that allow uses within that. The preface was of kind of approaching this was that any master plan would utilize those wetland impacts, right? We don't have a master plan because, again, we were running up against that clock of the wetland permit expiring. So based on the timing there, and then the annexation didn't happen in the Bluffton Parkway uncertainty, they're not ready to move forward with an initial master plan at this time. So it literally would just be digging the ponds to get the dirt to fill the wetlands and
If
a
you
dirt
did
road.
that now versus later, I mean, if you did that now, are you pigeonholing yourself into what you can develop?
No, we would just be, a core permit like that takes 1.5 to 2.5 years to obtain. And this was part of a larger permit, as were a lot of the permits in Buckwalter for wetlands. So again, it's going to expire in June. So we're just trying to be ahead of that and get the wetlands impacted under the current permit.
Lydia, anything to follow?
I saw the response in the narrative, but could you just talk us through the reasoning behind why you don't want to access from the town of Bluffton's future?
Yeah, so two things there. One is we've got about a 200-foot buffer from that existing power easement. Now there's a 200-foot, 2 power easements there. And then we've got that buffer, so you wouldn't see the clearing, maybe obviously at the left side where it connects to the parkway you would, but the thought was to keep the clearing back and not invite people to be curiosity lining up right across from Innovation Drive. People are going to drive over there and see what's going on. We're trying to prevent that, and then the fact also that both of those are accesses on the approved access management plan, so they'll ultimately be accesses, but the one to the west also has a development permit under review by the town where they're going to be clearing that if they get approval, all likelihood is they will. And so that way we'd only limit the disturbance to just that access. Because they'll use the same one, but they'll probably improve it and pave it and then go west to their property. And then the dirt road would just be east and then offset off of the parkway.
Charlie? Nothing?
Yeah, I have a couple questions.
Go for it.
Dan, let me ask you, because I got to think about this after I asked you a couple questions yesterday. The dry ponds, are those set in stone or do those go through stormwater?
No, they have to do a full stormwater review.
So this whole plan has to go through full stormwater prior to final?
Yes.
Okay. I'm seeing, you probably both want to stay there. I'm seeing this road go beyond, if you go back to the access management plan for a second, you see where it basically curves up and goes up to Innovation Drive. It does not go beyond that point, but what's being proposed is going beyond that point. So, two things. First of all, you're talking about getting ready for the access back and forth. This goes beyond that, but the second and the more major question in my mind is how does what's being proposed relate to the proposed realigned Bluffton Parkway? Does it interfere with it? Does it go in conjunction? Can it be tied in? If people wake up and realize we need this before it's developed?
Yeah, so, I mean, the Bluffton Parkway, that conversation's been going on,
Oh, I know, I've been around.
yeah, a very long time, obviously. Yeah, that alignment doesn't align with the wetland permit. That's more of an angle, I believe.
Okay. Well, what I'm looking at, if I'm seeing the maps right, where this proposed Bluffton Parkway is right in the middle of that third crossing. And yeah, John, you might be able to speak.
We have purposefully made sure it does not affect it. It keeps the Phase 5B realignment in place. It does not do that, it doesn't touch it at all. And what it does, it gives connectivity all the way to Lake Point Drive, all the way through to Buckwalter Parkway, Lake Point Drive, because the town and all of us worked together for years to try to keep connectivity so that you keep people both within the community, off the road, and it provides connectivity all the way from Lake Point Drive, Buckwalter, to Innovation, all the way to Hampton Lake, all the way to River Ridge, without getting on the parkway. So yeah, we kept that in mind, number one. And you asked the question, we're working on a plan. It's really a village. What we're trying to create is a village. We don't have a commercial village. It is a commercial village where the people in Buckwalter, in that area, West Bluffton and Buckwalter, which is a high-intense development area, they don't have to get on the roads to come down the great part of Old Town. They'll still do it, but they'll have that access. They'll have that there. So that's what we're working on and been planning. It just takes, we have to know. It takes a while to get it planned. We have to keep our wetlands permitted. We want to keep those crossings because they're hard to get. But all of our plans, the town wants those connectivity from one end to the other, and that's what those crossings do. Thank you.
I see a sense of, minor sense of hesitation on planning commission just because we're not seeing the whole picture. So I hope you understand that. But if I hear you right, so if we take this, just to kind of set it in my mind, if we take this red dotted line that's going up towards Town Center and Innovation Drive, and we extend it, it's going to end up by that up and down arrow that goes to Lake Point, pretty much.
Actually, y'all have the wrong road. You have the wrong road. That Phase 5B is not what it's.
It was shifted up a little.
The county has approved it be shifted up a little bit. Okay. So when that's okay. No. But I'm just saying, once that shifts up, this road comes straight across almost to where the light is. Not just above where the light is, but it in no way.
And then it theoretically,
realignment could be too hard for that.
It theoretically will have that connection.
It does have that connection. Yeah, it does.
Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody have anything further? Ready to make a motion?
I move that we approve the plan as submitted with the condition, Dan, help me out here. With condition that an approved encroachment permit allowing the applicant to perform work within the town-owned Innovation Drive extension property will be required prior to final development plan approval.
Do I have a second?
Second.
How was that?
We'll go with Jason.
Was Jason?
Sorry.
I looked up and saw his mouth move, so.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Item number 4 is a public hearing. This is for certain amendments to the Town of Bluffton's Municipal Code of Ordinances, Chapter 23, Unified Development Ordinance. So since this is a public hearing, I'm going to first call for public comment for the public hearing for UDO amendments. Second call for public comment for the public hearing for UDO amendments. Final call for the public comment for UDO amendments. The public hearing is closed. Okay, Charlotte, you would present.
Thank you. This is a continuation of the amendments, various amendments we have to support the strategic plan. As you know, we do annual assessments and we identify things that need to be amended, and we still are finding things after 4 months. So they're just very high level when I hit the things that we've done. I do have the amendments if you'd like for me to pull that up and we can talk about that more in depth. So the first item we have is related to the public hearing notice. We are recommending that we remove published notice requirement for demolition of any structure, not just contributing structures within Old Town. We do require site posting and believe that's sufficient. There's no state requirement for published notice. So there's that proposal. We are also recommending removing the posting requirement of published notice to be on our website and at Town Hall and sent to registrants. Anyone who signs up for emails from the town, we will send this information out via the agenda, so that information will be available. We do post our meetings as well at Town Hall, so that information is already available and we don't need that extra step. Regarding signage, we are proposing, and this is a correction, to limit the maximum number of flags within Old Town to 2. That was an oversight when we made amendments to the sign ordinance in the past. And we're also recommending specifically calling out clutter signs or feather signs, as you see there in the graphic, as a prohibited sign type. And as you know, these are fairly popular and we see them popping up quite often. Additionally, we are recommending the addition of a median house type to Old Town Bluffton Historic District. This particular house type is similar to both village and vernacular. However, we do not have a 1 to 2 story house type. We believe that this is needed. And with this will also come the development standards, setbacks, the build to line as well. We believe if we have the median house type, there's going to be less reliance on the additional house type, which has setbacks and a build to line that may not necessarily be appropriate for certain locations. So that will close that particular gap. With regards to the Old Town Bluffton Historic District, I kind of hit on that already. We're also recommending that we adjust the side yard setbacks for several building types from 5 feet to 8 feet. That would be, again, the side yard. We've had some issues with driveways perhaps being too close to the property line, which in some cases is not appropriate, and this may actually save some vegetation and trees as well. Regarding cupolas and towers, we just want to add, be a little more specific about the height requirement. Instead of stating above the zoning district maximum, we are identifying that it's above the adjacent ground level. There are some other suggested amendments that did not appear in your staff report, but we, staff identified these, and if you feel they're appropriate, you could possibly make an amendment and add these 2 amendments as well. So one is to eliminate the permit requirement for temporary signage for the property, sales and leases, construction projects and campaigns, election signs rather. And this is a correction. When we did the sign ordinance update, we left out a sentence. And so again, this is just a correction. And then we'd also like to suggest the elimination of the public notice requirement for street naming. We can do that at staff level. That is not a state requirement that there be public notice. There is for renaming. That will be in touch. Additionally, we'd like to suggest, public notice requirement for minor amendments to a subdivision plan when it is associated with an active development plan, because there will be public notice for the development plan. So with that, we believe the criteria are being met. Actually, 4 of the criteria don't apply. It does meet the applications manual. And here are the potential actions that you can take with regard to these amendments, and I'll have a suggested motion to show you. If this is approved tonight, the recommendation made to town council, it will move forward to council on July 11th, and then a public hearing will be set for August 8th. So the proposed recommended motion, I'm not going to read it, you see here, it does include the 2 additional amendments that we suggested post-publication of the staff report.
Does anyone have any questions for Charlotte? Is that dry? Does anyone want to provide a motion?
I'd like to make a comment if I could. I mean, I'm liking everything except I kind of like seeing the street naming come before us because I think it's another set of eyes that comes and looks at the names of the streets. And if we drop it to staff level, that's just one less set of reviews.
Is this eliminating planning, reviewing street
Oh,
names?
public notice.
Public
Never mind.
notice.
I'll get with the program. Thank you.
You went to the bathroom. That's
Yes.
all.
No, she was talking about that when I walked back in.
We talked about it before.
Sorry.
Okay.
Never mind, no comment.
Okay, so we need a motion, not a recommendation, is that a motion?
I'll make a motion. I move to approve the amendments to the Town of Bluffton Code of Ordinance, Chapter 23, Unified Development Ordinance, as recommended by town staff with the following additional amendments. Section 5.3.7, eliminate the sign permit requirement for the following temporary signage: property sales / leases, construction projects, and campaign signs. Section 3.24, eliminate the public notice requirement for street naming and for minor subdivision associated within an active development plan.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Charlene.
Big shot.
Okay. Number 5 on the agenda, or item is Big Blue Marble Academy for a certificate of appropriateness for the Highway Corridor overlay, a request by Samantha Lasky, development manager on behalf of the parcel owners for approval of a certificate of appropriateness. Katie, is the applicant?
Yes, we do. We put Samantha down as the applicant because she was on the application and just to hear you pronounce her name. However, Mark is here on behalf of the application, so there is someone to answer questions on the application if you need them. Good evening, Madam Chairman, Commissioners. The first of the 2 items that I have before you tonight is a certificate of appropriateness Highway Corridor Overlay District for Big Blue Marble Academy. Amanda went through this, so thank you, Madam Chairman. Here is the site plan for Big Blue Marble. So as you can see, you've got Mill Creek on the right-hand side of your screen, Slater on the top of your screen. There is a wetland area to the right, and then the very bottom of your screen is South Carolina Highway 170. I like your mouse. So I have labeled them because this site is actually on a 45-degree angle, and so it is a little bit confusing when you're looking at the site plan that is fitting on a PowerPoint slide, but the north elevation is labeled here. It's what faces Slater Street and the parking, so north is north on this screen here, but this whole site is rotated about 45 degrees. So I've labeled them with where they're facing to hopefully make that easier. So you've got the front elevation is the bottom one on the screen, which faces Highway 170 in the highway corridor. Every property fronts the highway regardless of how the site is accessed or used. So the front elevation is the second one on your screen. Then you have the west elevation, which faces Mill Creek Boulevard. Here you've got it with the, you can tell the difference in the 2 sides because of the single set of air conditioning units on this one that have the screen wall in front of it, and on the east elevation, which faces the play area towards the wetland, is the double set of HVAC units here that split on either side of the window. So again, rear, which faces the parking lot at the top of your screen, front that faces Highway 170, west, which faces Mill Creek, and east, which faces the play area. Those are your elevations. The dumpster enclosure is here. All of this has been outlined more detailed, obviously, in your staff report, so you have that in front of you. I'm welcome to go back to any of these. And then here is your color board materials for the roofing, siding, brick detail work at the bottom. They do have the colors listed over here, and they are shown in color here. So they should be close to accurate on here, but the actual color names are listed in that color board. This is the landscape plan, so you can see the highway is on the bottom of your screen again. I have put the plant schedule here on the right side of your screen. You know, I like to do a nice cut and paste job just to make it confusing. And you've got Slater Street here. The lighting plan, because the lighting plan is very hard to read on the screen, even this size, it's easier when you're able to zoom in specifically on things. I have highlighted for you the light fixtures so that you can see where they're located. They have met the lighting standards on this for the illumination levels, and so the photometrics that they currently have in place are meeting those standards for the parking area and the sidewalks and walkways. And those are down here, they've labeled them for you. That's not the landscape plan, that is a lighting detail. I was testing you. This is the lighting map. And then the review criteria, it is found in much greater detail in your staff report. However, it's the design review criteria in Article 5. In this case, the only item of Article 5 that applies to this site is when it comes to stormwater management, which translates into some of the tree protection / landscaping standards. Then there's the development agreement, PUD concept plan, master plan, subdivision, and any other applicable agreements or plans, which includes the development plan, and then it also must comply with our applications manual. Planning Commission, with the Certificate of Appropriateness Highway Corridor, has the authority to approve the application as submitted by the applicant, approve the application with conditions, or deny the application as submitted by the applicant, or at the request of an applicant, can always table the application as well. Staff recommends with the following items do not meet the requirements, and with those changes could meet the requirements to recommend approval. The first one, I'm going to run through them if that's okay, Madam Chairman, and then we can invite the applicant to speak on behalf of anything, or I can answer questions. The first one is that the landscape plan must be revised to include broadleaf overstory tree in each peninsula. On our landscape plan, you can see here, these right here are the landscape islands that require those. Currently, they're being shown as a crepe myrtle, which is not an overstory tree. The second one is that the transformer needs additional screening because it is a utility and it is at the front of the site. This is a really challenging location because the transformer does have to be close to the right-of-way. However, with this, there's some really great screening all in here, but because of the site triangle for the corner, we just need a little additional height. The materials that they've proposed are actually saw palms, and if larger than currently proposed with the 2-gallon installation, they may be acceptable, so that's up to you all to determine the appropriateness of the screening for that transformer there. The next one is the landscape buffer needs to be continuous at Slater Street. This is a comment that was received at the development plan. Right now it says shrubs to be added for landscape buffer along this elevation here. I can't see my mouse on the screen, right? Okay, good. So this area here needs to have some landscaping that is buffered up. Yeah, more robust. And the development plan has also captured this comment in their review, so it's something that they will be aware of. The next item is that there are mechanicals that are all in the front elevation of the structure. So this faces Highway 170, the front of the structure. Those need to be relocated so that they are not facing the highway, or they are adequately screened with an architectural feature, meaning a roof line or something that is part of the actual structure to disguise those from view for the Highway 170. And then along the same lines, there are electric meters that are on the front elevation here as well. So those need to either be relocated, potentially to a side elevation, or to be screened with an architectural element so they're not visible. The next one is the dumpster enclosure is currently proposed as split face CMU. That is fine as a base material. However, split face exposed CMU block is not a permitted material within the highway corridor, so it's something that needs to be faced appropriately. This could be in a variety of different ways. It does need to have some relationship to the primary structure. So like a tabby stucco, while appropriate in some locations, probably not on this one, since this one has brick and hardy but no tabby. So A sand finish might be appropriate, or a hardy plank material, something like that. The next one is that the metal fence detail has not been provided with the certificate of appropriateness plans. After I finished publishing this report, Dan did find a detail of it within the development plan. It was buried in there, so I didn't see it when I was reviewing this. This is the fence that runs from here along the front, ties in at the corner, encloses the play area, and then around the front here, and ties back in at the far side of the building. So more information on that fence needs to be submitted with the certificate of appropriateness stuff. The development plan detail that outlined it was a steel tube style fence that had a hinged top, but it was for the highway corridor, it's an appropriate fence type for that. It's not a chain link or woven metal fence of any kind. So what I did see in the development plan is right, it just needs to be translated over to this as well. And then the next one is that same fence at the southeast corner of the building needs to be revised so that the sidewalk remains passable. It's a 4 foot or 4.5 foot sidewalk according to my measurements, which may be a little off, but the door opens at 3 feet. And when you zoom in on that, oops, we're not zooming with this thing today, but if you zoom in on this corner right here, you can see that the door, when it opens, it becomes slightly impassable because it would stop there, meaning if there's an emergency, it could not be passed there, and that needs to be revised. That could be handled easily by pulling the fence corner out or adjusting the sidewalk so that it ties in diagonally, something along those lines. The next item is that the dormers should be centered over the elements below them. Low country vernacular is traditional. It's typically a traditional configuration of genuine materials. That's the language from our Unified Development Ordinance for the Historic District, but our Historic District is our best example of low country architecture in this area. So the area that we're speaking of are these dormers here. On the front elevation, they are centered between doors, they're centered between windows, the elements beneath them line up. On the front elevation, that is the actual front elevation, they are just a little bit off center from all of the elements beneath them, so it gives it a little haphazard appearance for how that's lining up. It makes it read more as a rear elevation than it does the front. The next one is that the front elevation should be reconsidered to better address the street, because this is, again, facing Highway 170. I repeated that a few times, I guess, but it needs to address the street so that it is the front of the building. They have done an excellent job of providing fenestration, including this center piece here. They have added the dormers and things like that. I believe, and this is my own opinion as I was reviewing it, that it's potentially there if they start to readjust some of those other items that have been captured above, where if the dormer becomes centered, now it reads more as a front. If the mechanicals get relocated, it now reads more as a front. So it may be that a combination of those things may help that last comment substantially. The next comment I have is for the lighting. I know you've heard this before, but they proposed LED lights. This is something that the ordinance didn't take into consideration at the time that it was written. And so a determination on the appropriateness of LEDs as opposed to the, I believe it's probably gas lights that they proposed in the ordinance. And a determination on that needs to be made on whether that's appropriate or not. The next one is just additional information ensuring that all of those LEDs, should you find them appropriate, are cutoffs and that they have their full cutoff and they have a concealed source. The third one for lighting is that the light poles have conflict with the trees. So on the landscape plan, all of those trees that are the crepe myrtles, which still need to be increased to the broadleaf trees, they're located at the front of the peninsulas here. And then at the lighting plan, they've been moved, but they're still crepe myrtles. So if the trees are proposed as they are shown on the lighting plan, there's not a conflict with the location, but there is still a conflict with the type. If the trees are shown as the landscape plan shows, then the conflict is with the type and the placement. So that needs to be addressed. And then if the landscape plan is the correct iteration, the photometric plan will need to be updated to reflect where they move those lights to ensure that it still meets those illumination standards. The final three are all under other items. They include the development plan needs to be finalized before a certificate of appropriateness can be issued, because the certificate of appropriateness always needs to come after the development plan. The Cypress Ridge covenant and restriction, the declarant for the covenants and restrictions needs to provide a letter. I believe at this time it is still D.R. Horton because it has not been handed off yet to the homeowners. But because it's located in that master plan, we need a letter from them. This is an administrative detail. And then the last one is, because this is a commercial property, any signage will have to be reviewed through a sign permit. Those three items are things that I'm pretty sure that I have memorized, just like the actions of the planning commission for this application. So the applicant is here before you tonight. I've listed them all out in the staff recommendations here so that they're visible. They're also in your staff report. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. And Mark is here to speak on behalf of the project. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions for Katie before I open it up to the applicant?
Yes, Katie.
Okay.
I can see they've got buffer listed off of Mill Creek Boulevard with how the plantings meet that buffer. Is there a buffer width that they have to adhere to between property line and site?
That buffer was reviewed through the development plan for the width and did meet it. I'm sorry, I don't have.
Because there's a part where this sidewalk comes around, and I think in preliminary, when we looked at this, the sidewalk that's on the dead-end portion of this parking lot where it's addressing Mill Creek, yes. That's pretty small between that piece of this, that corner, that bottom corner of the sidewalk, right?
Sorry.
The outer corner of that sidewalk and the property line looks maybe like 2-3 feet. And when we looked at it preliminary, I don't think that walkway was there because we had a whole conversation about where this handicap parking was and potentially locating it so it didn't have to, you didn't have to come across a crosswalk. So I don't remember that walkway being there. Maybe it was. But at 2-3 feet, I feel like that's an insufficient buffer. And if it stays, which I could even possibly get on board with that, it at least needs to connect to the walkway at Mill Creek.
So both. Okay.
Which would take it to a point where it maybe had 4 or 5 feet, and maybe that does meet the buffer requirement. But I think it's a big miss just to have it that close and not connect.
I see the challenge there with the, for the pedestrian connectivity that is required because of the handicap space location.
Correct.
How they do that is, there are several ways that could be proposed. Potentially increasing the size or the size or type of plantings in that area between the sidewalk and the property line. Would that be a potentially sufficient solution?
Well, where it's close there, they don't even have room to plant something. If you put something bigger, you're just basically encroaching on the walkway that's there. So that doesn't really necessarily work well either. And everything they're proposing here is either saw palmettos or bottle brush, which is poisonous, and saw palmettos, which are pokey.
That's not good for children.
Neither one of those are good for children.
So potentially reconsidering the plantings that
They're at least evergreen, which I can appreciate. But the fact is that that's a very narrow width to be trying to plant between that sidewalk that gives them ADA compliance and the sidewalk along Mill Creek. And I did have one other clarification that I wanted to ask, which was, you'd mentioned that buffer along Slater Street. Are you referring to they need to be planting outside the property line within the right-of-way, or you're just saying it needs to be more continuous within the property line?
more continuous within the property line.
I agree. Okay.
Any other questions for Katie before?
I do have one. You said you did find the detail of the fence. Explain that a little bit more, because that was one of my major concerns, that we don't know what that looks like.
And I want to know how tall it was too.
Okay, I can double check on that while the applicant, or perhaps they can speak to it specifically, but I can potentially pull it up for you for that.
Why don't we have the applicant come up, maybe he can answer some of those.
Yeah. Perfect.
And please state your name since you're not whoever it was I tried to say.
Absolutely.
Samantha. Not Samantha? It's not Samantha.
Sam?
Good evening. Thank you, Madam Chair, good evening, Planning Commissioners. My name is Mark Hohenberger on behalf of 814 Development. Samantha has been working with staff to work through the development proposal. She had a baby on Monday, so she wanted to take a little bit of time off.
2 days.
Yeah, no, right. No, so she's doing well, but, so I'm stepping in. I'm aware of most of the items that Samantha's been going through over the course of the last several months, working with staff. I would like to take the opportunity to walk through a few of the items or all of them, just to get some direction as we go forward so that we can make the appropriate corrections. I don't think we have an issue with many of them. The broadleaf tree, not an issue. My thought there is maybe a more of a columnar variety, if that would be acceptable. It would provide the look and feel, but also not provide any interference with the lighting. The transformer, I didn't know if that could be handled just with additional screening on that south side, maybe some strategically planted trees that we'll show on the plan, and then adjust accordingly as part of the final placement and inspection. Rooftop mechanicals, this one is a difficult one. In speaking with the architect prior to this evening's meeting, we've been working back and forth and coming up with a screening plan that would provide screening that is consistent with the siding materials of the building to provide that on that rear roof.
Well, when we get to the appropriate time, I have a suggestion that I think might be a real good one for that.
I'm open.
And you're not going to like it at first, but I'll
Yeah, but you're gonna need
I'm not gonna like it, yeah.
Yeah,
But we'll do that later, so if we just pause that and then keep going.
All right, nope, I appreciate that. The hedge along Slater, that's not an issue. I don't know why that isn't shown in greater detail than just that. No, it may have just been a timing thing to get back in. Electric meter, I don't know if it'd be appropriate, again, we could provide some type of privacy screen, or my thought would be some type of hedge, again, planted strategically to eliminate some view shed coming through there.
Could it not be moved to a side?
So that's where the utility room is. We could move it.
I think so.
Yeah, but we can look at that. I know I discussed that with the architect as well, just that is where the utility room is, and so it's coming in there to go to the panel, so open to that conversation. The dumpster, we provided a service entrance on that dumpster, so I'm not sure the comment regarding the
I think it's the approach
Yeah.
and the
Oh,
direction
sorry.
of the gate.
The door just, it opens so that when you open the dumpster door, it'll open towards the building. So if you switch the hinges to the other side, it'll open away from it. It's like,
Understood.
it's the refrigerator in the kitchen issue. Where you
Understood.
run into it.
Yep, you're in the corner. Gotcha.
Sorry.
Understood. Thank you.
Yeah, it's minor.
Yep. As far as the material, we could do that in the same wainscot brick. It's a masonry dumpster enclosure at this point, so we'll just match that.
Well, just being more economical would, if they accept, or, stucco finish is acceptable, then you're thinking of another cost.
Yeah. It just depends
Yeah, I'm
on.
just thinking on the dumpster being farther away and not, it can go either way.
We'll look at it.
Value engineering.
Yeah,
Brick would be nicer, but
let me go with that. I think it'll be a better tie-in to the building. Stucco's good, but if we don't have stucco elsewhere, stucco contractors, that can be a challenge as well. Being from the north, we don't do a lot of stucco, but
You know how to do brick.
100% we do. But I say that only to we've done several sites now in Nevada and in a couple other southern states that have required stucco. When it's a big job, it's easy to get somebody to come in to do it. To do a dumpster enclosure might be a little more of a challenge, and the brick would probably be an easier play and I think look better. Metal fence, it is an aluminum wrought iron style fence. So decorative black.
What are the height?
Typically the perimeter, I would have to go back and look, the perimeter fencing is typically 5 foot.
The other question I have, and this is from my children's ministry days and having to deal with things like this, emergency exits from that fence.
Yep.
I'm not seeing anything addressed. So you have, for example, you have a fire, God forbid, and these kids have to evacuate. And the 170 side, if they evacuate, they all evacuate into a fenced-in area, and there's no place to get out.
Yeah, I will look at that and address it. Often
It can be one way, it can be push bar,
100%.
but
Yep.
you need that.
Yep, we typically do those with our childcare tenants from that standpoint. If not caught on the initial plan review, it's usually a fire safety review as part of the building plan comment.
Okay. Sorry, that's a former life of mine.
No, this is our core business, so it should be addressed.
And you're having nice sharp tops to the fence in case the kids try and climb.
Typically not.
No.
Fence, the conflict with that door, that is no problem. As Katie indicated, we can pull that fence out and just extend that concrete pad. The dormers, no issue. We'll have to just work through, we'll have to work through how that, whether it's centered on the existing, there's 5 windows below, so maybe we shift that window schedule to maybe 4 windows and make it line up, or center the window or the dormer on the 5 windows, but we'll look at it. I understand the intent to make it more consistent or a better balanced elevation. Lighting, we like to use LED when appropriate. If that's not, we will come up with another material. So if you would just give us direction on that. Cut off luminaires, we will provide the detail sheets as part of any resubmittal. My apologies that that is not included. And I think everything else is addressed.
And just so you know, for LEDs, we're dealing with code that was written in the master plan years ago.
Sure.
Where it was approved the LED, it makes sense.
Understood. I think that addresses pretty much everything I was looking to get some direction on. If there's any other open items that I mistakenly overlooked, I'd be happy to answer any questions or address those items as part of your discussion.
Charlie, do you want to go ahead with your suggestions as they may,
Yeah. Again, you're not going to like it at first, but bear with and hear it through because.
Give me time to
This is because of another life that he leads.
give me time to recover.
Yeah, go to our site plan first, okay? No, the site plan.
Site plan.
Yeah. One of the challenges I have now that we've seen the floor plan and the fact that the entry drop-off area is in what would be, looking at this, the top right or the dead end,
North elevation, yeah.
is you're not going to have good traffic flow for the drop-off, okay? I know we've had the conversation that a lot of parents are going to park and drop their kids, but I've seen it in action. People drive in, they unload the car, they keep driving. If you have that dead end on that corner, that becomes an issue. So go ahead and go to the floor plan, Katie. My suggestion will also address the hoods and everything else. And it's probably going to take you a second to understand what I'm going to say. I want you to consider moving every corner 90 degrees. So where the kitchen is and the exhaust hoods, move that do you have a mouse you can point or something? Move that straight up to the front where the check-in area is. Move the check-in area all the way over to the other end. Move a classroom either straight down or to the other corner. I would say straight down and to the other corner. Your architectural elements outside shift so that they all look the same. Your drop-off area becomes in that part of the parking lot where you can look through, and all of a sudden your exhaust hoods and your electric panel are not on what we consider the front or the corridor facing side of the building.
Yeah.
Strongly suggest you look at doing that because that will solve everything.
Doesn't that also solve the
Ma'am?
handicap access, because then you can have that at the parking right adjacent to the building and you don't have to cross?
Right,
And
that's true.
security for the kids in the play area too, so that you're not, the lobby's on one end of the building and then, like, there's more, you know.
Yes, and you still have, from a children security perspective, you still have an entryway that leads to a hallway where all the classrooms are down the hallway. It's not, you're not splitting it in the middle.
Yeah, I don't,
I know you're not the architect, but
I'm not adverse to that. No, where I'm coming at it from was, I believe that was part of our original submittal. The architect mirrored this based on comments that were received, because the layout works better on that east end from accessibility to parking and everything else. So let me look at that, because I discussed that with the architect. Actually, I revisited it this afternoon, and she had made mention that we had actually given direction to mirror this footprint as part of that. So I'll 100%, I have no problem looking at that.
the only thing this
That being
does,
said, the warming kitchen then would flip to the north, so I would have to flip that side of it, and
the
choose
only-
on the other side.
the only thing that would be identical on this is your check-in area and your warming kitchen are going to be on opposite ends of the building now,
Yeah.
not the same end.
We're just flipping
I know.
it. Yeah, that's the only tough part is operationally being, everyth's focused on that end, so it's the education side or the classroom side versus staffing.
And the challenge we have is we have to deal with the architectural elements, we have to deal with, we don't want the back of the building to be the front, which is, I know it's reversed for you in this case.
Yeah.
Because it's addressing a major corridor for us.
Yeah.
I just think it'll flow a lot better if you can do that.
Yeah, okay. Let me take a look at it. Having the mechanical unit on the front, yeah.
I think that reaction that you're having is our reaction to it being on 170, so.
No, understood. I got to figure out how to look at it. All right.
I also would just add that I don't think that just adding screening of like a fence type material or other type of just like a parapet wall out of nowhere, like I think it would need to be fully integrated to the architecture, whatever that screening becomes, so it wouldn't feel like it's just tacked on or just landscape or a fence or something like that. I think it needs to be built into.
Yeah, it is as a, how would you say? It's an enclosed, I don't want to say like catwalk area, but it's not just fencing, so it is screening that is consistent with the building and trying to
It needs to feel like it's part of the architecture, so it shouldn't feel like screening, it should feel like building, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that one I don't know how to do.
Which is facing the other side, I don't think we have that comment, but when it's facing 170, it needs to feel like it's part of roof or wall, not
Out of the architecture.
Yeah.
Yeah, understood. It's from a code standpoint and from an exhausting event, that's the challenge of it, is just it's got to be kind of in that realm.
Well, I think what you
It
have
can't
is
be,
acceptable on the other
it
side.
can't be enclosed, it still has to have access, it has to vent.
Yes.
Well, but
That
if you
just
throw
can't
it
be
on
on
the other side.
170.
Yeah, right. No, if that's how we're getting there, I
Yeah.
don't, I'll figure out a way. I'll leave it with that one. I'm pretty resourceful, but, yeah. Operationally, that's the only challenge that I see is opposite ends of the building, but let me look at it.
Okay, with that being said, then, do you want to, what are the options? Because this is a lot of changes that we're talking about that can't just be staff level approval.
So, Madam Chair, thank you. And again, as always, for the record, Rich Silveris here on behalf of the Planning Commission as y'all's legal counsel. So your options are to approve with conditions, to approve, or to deny. Those are your three options under the UDO. But there is that fourth option that y'all have utilized in the past to prevent unnecessary delay, and that is with the consent of the applicant to potentially table it until a meeting, the next meeting or whenever that needs to be, so that in the event of a denial, it doesn't start back from the beginning, which I know everybody wants to avoid, in particular when there are creative solutions being proposed. So based off of what I've heard, my recommendation would be potentially to, again, if it's within the applicant's discretion, but to see if y'all would be interested in tabling it.
Yeah, I don't, I'm not opposed to that. Obviously, we were coming to try to get it with conditions, but hearing your comment and knowing that that wouldn't be a staff level review, I don't know that we have an option that is suitable other than to table. So I would absolutely be open to that. Thank you.
We hate to prolong it, but we want it to be the right product.
No, 100%, and I understand that, and like I say, I wish we had addressed that better or understood what the exact concern was, because I think we could have came back with something different. But I will look at that and get with our architects to be able to address how that is screened.
Madam Chairman, if we're looking at tabling the application, my request from staff level to ensure that we are able to work with them and get something before you that is approvable next time is if we could look at the items that are staff's recommendations and make a clear list of other items that you see as challenges beyond those, if any, that I can ensure that when we're looking at it together as a team, we're able to bring it back before you very successfully. So for the landscaping, the only other item that I heard as a concern, only others, I guess a loose one there, but the plantings at the connection near the handicap parking spot are narrow, pokey, and poison. And that's Kathleen's phrasing of it, of course, never mine. But that's what I was hearing from there, is to find a way at the handicap parking to ensure that that buffer is increased if the pedestrian access at that point remains in the same location. If it moves, then the buffer would increase because the sidewalk would disappear and plantings would be added in that space. Is that?
I would suggest reconsidering your plant, the shrub selection across the board. You've got bottle brush.
100%. That's going to be a great conversation with our landscape architect.
I would look at that. And where you've got kids not located, those are perfectly fine selections.
I really. So I appreciate the education.
I did have a question about the islands with the trees. Katie, do they need to have those planted with anything underneath, or can those just be mulch beds? Where the light poles are and the trees are in the islands?
They can be mulched beds.
They don't have to be planted.
The trees have to be planted.
The
shrubs underneath.
There doesn't have to, there's not required.
It needs to be stabilized. So pine straw and mulch would be an acceptable thing. River rock is not an acceptable ground solution for the low country.
I concur with that. Speaking of stabilization,
We don't have that in Cypress Ridge. What are you talking about?
I've seen it around here. I've seen also white rock, which is or lava rock. Okay, so anyway.
Stop judging.
Stabilization on that detention area, how is that being addressed?
Through the development plan.
So it's with the civil, and they're doing some kind of
100%.
permanent seating in that, okay. I would also like to see, there's a couple of additional items that I'd like to see addressed. There is a live oak that's really close to the corner, since we're on a 45, or
What number
the
is the
southeast.
last, 21?
There's a 11-inch live oak and an 18-inch pine,
Okay, I see
and
it.
it's right next to all of those. So I would just suggest re-looking at your overstory trees to make sure they're not like 8 feet from another existing overstory tree.
Oh, understood.
And I think there may have been another incident I saw where it was, again, really close.
Just a competing,
And that particular live oak, I think.
I see where they're at right now.
I would suggest putting it closer to your open field area so that you
Sure.
can provide a little more shade for the kids.
Yep.
You're talking about this area here?
No, straight down from the playground as it comes out of the building, if you come straight down.
Right there by the problem corner for the fire.
Yeah.
Right here? Yeah, I see it. Thank you.
And then I'd love to see a little more screening around that dumpster
Okay,
on the right-hand side of it, just because it's pretty open there. Assuming you end up clearing that during construction, I just want to see it planted back. If it doesn't, if the silt fence were right along the property line or the edge of drive, I wouldn't care. And it was all natural, I wouldn't care. I just want it a little more concealed. And then that transformer, the way your plant schedule is written is that it's a 2-gallon, which is only going to get you like a 12-inch tall saw palm. And you've got 2.5 feet listed under your size, which is probably a 30-gallon, so it's a significantly more expensive
okay.
shrub to
Sure.
achieve. So if it was 2.5 feet tall at install, that'd be great around the transformer, but at 2 gallons, you're not gonna get there.
I assume, yeah,
So you just need to reconcile those sizes.
sure. I assume that'll be at our expense from a standpoint of during the inspection, we'd go based on size, not gallon size, right? So
Yeah.
we'll take care of that.
And that is a requirement of the development plan. There is a minimum height requirement. There's not a gallon size requirement of any of those.
Right.
So
Thank you.
we'll double check that at CFC and my final highway corridor inspection down the road.
Okay. So take care of the landscape items.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, you can always come back here.
Oh, wait, I think I had a lighting comment. Oh, 3,000 Kelvin. It has options here on the left-hand side on that sheet. It's just that none of them are listed, and so once you start getting up higher, I don't know.
Can you read that?
When you start getting up 4K, it
Yeah,
starts looking blue.
we'll identify exactly which fixture and provide a
I just
cut
want
sheet
more-
of that specific fixture.
I just want it to be warm.
Yep.
Like, yeah.
Well, let's finish going down that list so we can get in. So we've got the landscape items taken care of.
Yep.
And you understand the
Understood.
direction on that. Katie, are you good with the direction? Okay, so then for the architecture,
Exits from fenced-in areas.
Yep.
Address that, and then
the mechanicals.
consider the suggestions about getting the hood and all that
Yep.
to the other side.
Yep. That's imprinted.
Address, I don't know that this falls under architecture, I think it does, but address the dead-end drop-off problem.
Yeah,
The fact that your kids are coming here now, they really should be coming here.
yeah, I will look at that. The one thing, and I know it may not resonate, but it is their requirement that a parent check them in. There is no opportunity to drop anyone off. So like they physically have to be escorted inside, checked in, and the parent can then leave. But I understand from a circulation standpoint and from a parking standpoint, so we'll address it, but there won't be any curb stop from that standpoint. What's that?
Is this going to be a tenant space, like this is the school?
I think it's owned by.
It's franchise, or I mean, it's corporate with Big Blue Marble. Yep.
Okay, well, just 'cause at some point, buildings live on for longer sometimes than the entities that.
Understood.
Yeah.
Understood.
Well, and I've seen a pair of parents come and one stays behind the wheel while the other takes them in, and if you have two of them.
Okay.
And backing up while other people are trying to pull in and.
Sure.
There was an iteration of this, when we were talking about this, where it was flipped. It was, at the time that we looked at the flipped, there was not actually a site plan that existed. It was like a half site plan, and so
Sure.
the
That would make
site
sense.
plan didn't reflect the elevations, and so I think probably there was some miscommunication.
And there was a change on the parking layout.
Something has to be flipped, but I
Yeah.
think that it, and that's
I think there was a change with the
Definitely
parking and the driveway
Yeah.
location as well, so we will look at that.
So back to.
Okay, so going back just to the list, the number 2, architecture, mechanicals, the electric meter, the dumpster, you're gonna clad in brick.
The electric meter is separate from the transformer, so is that something that we can address with landscape? That was one of the things.
The
that-
electric meter would be on the architecture, we don't want that facing 170.
Okay.
Brick on the dumpster, the door operation of the dumpster, which that's an easy fix. The metal fence, just include that material within this submittal and show the height, because I noticed on that detail.
100%.
It didn't show the height.
It'll be identified all the way through.
I think the fence location, when she's talking about being passing with the doors open, that might correct itself when you start rearranging some things. It might even itself back out.
Yep, we'll make sure that's addressed.
If they're going to be the dormers, just make sure that they align with something
Yep.
below and are appropriate in scale.
Understood.
And then we just talked about the front elevation. I think with all those different changes, that will probably improve that. Okay, so that takes care of that. Any other architecture items?
Yes.
Go ahead.
You have a 212 dormer. Our minimum roof slope is 4 and 12. So
Okay.
fundamentally, a 412 main mass roof will not work with a 412 dormer, so something with that is going to need to change.
Sure.
I think given the current design, the dormers, I think, would be required in terms of breaking up long expanses of unbroken roof and wall mass. So kind of thinking through that. Also, just as an aside, a 412 main mass is not a particularly low country vernacular type of architecture anyway, so I think it might help you if you could make like a 612 or something work for the main roof so that you could get the 412 dormer to fit within that roof. Additionally, I think that the extra blank areas to the middle on the 170 elevation, to me, that still feels like we have some unarticulated large expanses of siding and roof, and would prefer to see that broken up more similarly to what your north elevation. I think that's an appropriate amount of fenestration and breaking up what you have on the north, but it doesn't quite translate onto that southern elevation, which for us is the primary view.
Adding in another reverse gable and then offsetting those
I
two
think
dormers would be
It could be different
appropriate.
however you want to
Okay.
handle it, whatever fenestration you want to do, but I think, yes, I think the north one's
We'll
more
try to-
acceptable for
okay.
southern elevation.
Commissioner Hart, is it this,
Yes.
this section right here?
Yes, yeah,
Both
on both sides, yeah. And kind of, I think we talked about the utilities, so hopefully this will change with that, but the blank panel doors too facing 170 does feel like a back entrance, not the front face of the facade, so if we can get that to the side or.
Would that be allowed on the street, the
Later.
not Slater, on the entrance? Yes, thank you. Sorry.
That's the side elevation.
Okay, it would be allowed there, because that may be able to flip when we're rearranging the entryway. That's here in
Push
the warming
these to
kitchen.
here.
Yeah, push something up there, yeah, because we're gonna,
But just don't remove the door necessarily. There's got to be some type of penetration, so it's not a blank wall.
yes, understood.
That is still the front.
Yep,
If something has to happen there, just.
yep.
And one more thing, well, couple, sorry. The doors, I think if the 170 elevation, if they can all be half light or full light, but not necessarily a combination of the two, just pick one of the door types to run
Okay.
along the 170.
All right, half-light would be more appropriate.
That's great.
Okay.
Saves on fingerprints.
But just, yes, a little bit of everything.
2 out of 3.
Oh, it's a hallway.
Well, children's fingerprints.
Yes, right.
And then the last thing was just the, and these are acceptable, but I would encourage you to look at a muntin pattern that creates square or vertically oriented glass, just because that is a low country architectural principle, so that each individual pane of glass is square or vertically oriented rather than horizontal. It's not something you have to do, but as we're kind of looking at that fenestration, if you wanted to look at a 2 wide, or a 2 light instead of the 4 light on those double hungs, that would meet that intent as an option, just something for you to consider.
Taking out the middle piece.
Okay.
The horizontal muntin.
the way that it currently is.
So pull the horizontal mounting out.
So then it gets that proportion, that vertical proportion.
Okay.
It's typically what we look for.
Which as you look at the roof pitch of that, it might
It might make
work
more
itself out
sense.
again.
Yep.
Okay, does anyone else have any other architectural comments that they can give him guidance on? Okay, so that covers for the architecture category. And then we have the lighting, we have the LED, I think we had said that we usually approve that one anyway, so that one should be okay. And then you were gonna give additional information for the luminaries. The light poles, you will relocate them or reduce
Make
the
them
conflict,
consistent with
whatever.
the 2 plans.
Yep. The photometric, you know, revised as well to show all of that, where everything goes right. Then all the other comments are just the general administrative things and plan development, so.
With regard to signage permits, you do not want those now, you're just indicating that separate
It has to
signage
happen.
permits will happen
Yeah.
eventually. The tenant would do those on their own.
That's just fine. It's my blanket comment because the one time it doesn't exist in here, it shows up as part of the original construction.
And everybody wants to claim that it was
Are
approved.
there any other comments, recommendations for him to consider?
Madam
Yes.
Chair, if I may, Commissioner Duncan brought up an issue about the sidewalk, and looking at, I pulled up the October, I think it was October of 2022 preliminary development plan during y'all's planning commission. It did not show that sidewalk on that preliminary development plan in that location, so whether you had any additional comments on that, I wanted to make sure that you had an opportunity to address.
I don't have, I'm glad that there's an ADA compliance, I'm glad it doesn't cross the road, that's fine. My only issue is that if there's a buffer along Mill Creek, that we've made sure to meet that. So that may mean they have to lose a parking spot to shift that all over to meet that buffer requirement. If they intend to keep it there. Alternatively, again, if they do the rotation of the building in 90 degrees, then they can put it over on the other side of the drive. Yeah.
And eliminate all that extra stuff.
And then add buffer back, and then it won't be a problem, so.
Yeah. So it just depends on how you do the architecture, just
Right,
think about how all that goes together.
yeah.
The only other comment that I had, and did you have?
No, I'm just trying to think through the layout of the interior as we're going through it, because those classrooms will then we'll have to have fencing on that west side, so I'll have to work through that. Because we'll have a similar pinch point, if you can go back to the landscape plan or site plan there. Right there, as it comes around, we'll have that same pinch point on the south side, because I have to fence that, because those will now become classrooms on that far end instead of the utility area.
This.
Yeah,
But you'll be able to remove some of the other fence.
I can probably pull some of it through. It'll probably end up looking similar to this. So I'll do the best I can and I'll figure it out.
Now that I was looking at that again, go back to the, where the fence is coming out under that covered area on the 170 side, the covered porch area. That fence, can we move it away from that?
We can pull it out.
Yeah, I just don't think that it needs to go on top of that.
That's typically how it's done. It's shown poorly on this plan.
How tall is the fence that's enclosing the AC units?
Typically 4 foot.
Okay. And that should put it over top taller than the AC units?
Yep.
Yes, but not taller.
Depending on the unit, they're usually 30 or 36 inch depending.
If you move that meter to the Mill Creek Boulevard side, which is where I hear
Make sure
starting to happen, I
100%.
the fence, you know, you can plant like a Confederate jasmine or something, but
Yep.
Screen it, put
Yeah.
vegetation or something.
yeah.
Yeah, vegetation's easiest, but sometimes some communities will like the screen wall effect, but again, I will come up with something appropriate, I promise.
And you can always call and ask Katie for her guidance.
100%.
I think she knows what we're saying.
She's gonna get used to calling now. You had it easy with Samantha, no?
I have a lot of PTO saved up. It was nice seeing you.
That hurts.
Okay, so, if we're gonna do a recommendation to table, or,
Is it a motion?
that's a
Yeah,
that's
I'd like
right,
to
I'm
make-
sorry, a motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we table with the consideration that the developer will work with staff to address our concerns.
Okay.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Okay, but
Did you want to say
That's all right. I didn't know if we had to table it to a meeting specific or not. Okay.
we let
We'll
you
work with
all
you because if we
decide.
can work that out as close as possible.
Understood. Thank you.
I'm getting his information so that I don't call Samantha while she is enjoying her day.
Ken, she sent me a text while I was sitting here and wished me good luck. I'm like, get off your phone.
Get some sleep.
Was it a boy or a girl?
You came back.
It is a boy.
You can speak for a minute. I have to run through the whole program. So. Perfect.
Send our congratulations.
Thank you very much. I will. I will for sure.
Okay. Perfect. I'll email you tomorrow.
Yeah, thank you.
Give you a list of
Let
what
me
you do.
steal my
Say.
notes. Thank you. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening. I appreciate the
Thank you
time.
for being receptive.
Absolutely. We'll try. We'll figure it out.
Okay, thank you. So item number 6 is the refuel certificate of appropriateness for highway corridor overlay. Certificate of appropriateness to permit the landscape, lighting, and architecture for a refuel convenience store and gas station located on South Carolina Highway 46 across from the May River Crossing intersection. Katie, we have another one.
Hi.
Hi.
Good evening. The application, as Commissioner Denmark just said, is...
I know, my name changes all the time.
Not all the time. It changed one time. I just worked with you longer under that name. The application is for a refuel convenience store and gas station. It is located along Highway 46, which is in the May River Crossing intersection, and it is in the New Riverside PUD within the New Riverside Village Master Plan. So this is that New Riverside Village area. We've seen a few applications before in this area. This application, as you can see, Highway 46 is at the top of your screen. The East Parkside Commons is towards the right of the screen. The back of the screen is New Riverside Village Way, and then the adjacent commercial property is on the left-hand side of your screen. I have provided the elevations here for you. Thank you for labeling the direction of the street as well. It makes it so much easier for me when I'm talking through all of these. So the starting with the rear elevation, which is New Riverside Village Way, that's internal to the development. This is the rear elevation at the top of the screen. The west-facing elevation is facing towards the, cheating here, towards the adjacent commercial property. The left elevation, which is this one here, faces towards Parkside Commons, and then the front elevation faces towards Highway 46. In front of this will be the fueling pumps, and then the buffer, and then the highway. So it is set back from the road quite a ways, and I will just pull up the site plan again. So this is the front, which faces 46. Fueling canopy, buffer, path, more buffer, Highway 46. So it is set quite a ways back, but it is all within the highway corridor. These are some perspectives that were provided from the applicant. This is the car wash building here, as well as the primary structure. The way that I set up my slideshow, the elevations for the car wash and dumpster enclosure are on the screen following the perspectives here. So this faces towards the interior road, and this faces towards the exterior road, which is Highway 46. So this is your front elevation of that car wash, and then the right and left elevations here, so you can see on the site plan. This is the side with all of the windows here, facing towards Highway 46, the front. The rear is the more service-oriented side of that building, and then the front or left and right of that. The colors, material, and gas canopy. So the gas canopy is proposed here with the curved roof, and it has one set of pumps that run along the length of the front area of the refuel. The materials and colors are located up here. The materials and colors were all things that did meet the highway corridor standards, so. This is an example of the frosted glass that was provided to us by the applicant. Because they have a lot of cooler space in a convenience store like this, they can't have true windows necessarily on all of this, but in order to provide architectural administration, this is the example that they provided. This one specifically, I believe, is the one that is located up in Beaufort. As you head towards Laurel Bay, which is, I can't remember the name of that street.
Going to Charles.
Harris Island Gateway.
Is it Harris Island Gateway? That seems so easy to remember. And then this is an example of that fuel canopy. This is the fuel canopy I took from Google Street Views from that same area. However, the one that is going to be proposed for ours is not the double, because it is a single row of fueling, not a double row of fueling. So you can see that here on the site plan. It has the two poles with the single pump in between. It's not the second row of gas pumps out here like you see at this one. So it'll be this and not that. Here is the lighting plan. They provided me a variety of the different areas. Some places they are able to do just one set because it is all commercial use. This one has several because it has parking, it has the landscape areas towards the front of it has the gas canopies. All of these have met the standards for the lighting, and they did an excellent job making sure that areas being illuminated by site and building lighting for public use, which impact the cumulative averages of the specific cumulative areas provided in the tables, have been omitted from the calculation summary tables. However, they are only a couple little tiny building lights right here. The rest of it has been included for this. So it is all covered under this, and the ones that are pedestrian lights are the only ones that have been omitted. So they did indicate that, and I appreciate that greatly. Makes my life easier on these. The landscape plan here, as you can see again, Highway 46 is at the top of your screen. Parkside Commons is at the right side of the screen. The left side is the commercial lot adjacent to it. And then the last road is at the bottom here, New Riverside Village Road. I've included the planting schedule here. With this one, because it is in the highway corridor for Highway 46 and not 170, it has the same review criteria. However, the development agreement, PUD concept plan, master plan, subdivision, the development plan, which is another agreement, and any other plans that are applicable, do apply to this. The Article 5 design standards do not apply to it, except for in the case of stormwater, which is part of the stormwater master plan that was adopted as part of Soloco. So that portion of it does apply, but the rest is all PUD stuff. And then the application manual. The Planning Commission has the authority to approve the application as submitted by the applicant, approve the application with conditions, or deny the application as submitted by the applicant. Town staff has found that there are some items that need to be addressed before it will meet those conditions, but otherwise it meets the conditions of the application. The best path forward may be the same as we approached it on the last application, where I go through them all. Or, perfect, Mr. Chairman. The landscape items. The first one is that the landscape plan needs to be updated to include additional plantings to create the 8-foot foundation buffer along the east side. So that is just this area here. The other areas, while this looks like there's a giant sidewalk here, it is a giant sidewalk, but it's all under a roof, and so it is part of a colonnade or flat porch that is being installed in the front here. So this area here that has the diagonal lines is going to be that landscape buffer in front of the building. This side has the foundation plantings here, and then this side here, with the exception of a small pinch point, which is still close to the 8 feet, but not quite there, it does meet the foundation planting requirements. The second one is that there's a Washington hawthorn, just one of them, guys, that is not meeting the minimum requirement for size because it is being used as a landscape island tree. It is this one right here. So that needs to be increased in size to be at least a 2-inch caliber. And if it is not something that they want to increase the size of that single hawthorn, they can propose a different broad story overleaf tree in that landscape island to meet that requirement. For the architectural requirements, the first one is that the propane and ice screening areas, you can see there are some outdoor coolers that are located right here. And then there's a propane storage that is located here. They've indicated that it's going to be the manufacturer's screening for the propane. We just need to see what additional screening is there, as the metal cage is a mesh fence essentially screening that from the Highway 46. So whether it's a knee wall or some other design solution to prevent that from being the first thing that you see when you are in the area there. The next item is the 2 and 12 pitched roof. As was brought up on the last application, a 4 and 12 is the first pitch that is considered a pitched roof by the standards from the ZDSO 90-3. This roof here is at a 2 and 12 pitch, so it would need to be increased to meet that standard. The third item is a determination on the appropriateness of the curved gas canopy. The ZDSO allows for pitched roofs of 4 and 12 or greater, and encourage low country roofing. This is not something that we typically see in low country, so a determination on the appropriateness of that instead of the hip, gable, or shed that are typical of this area is something that is needed by the Planning Commission. And then the next one is that the service yard / utilities need to be shown so that we can ensure that they are meeting the screening and placement requirements. If they are to be placed on the roof, which it kind of appears that they may be, we need a roofing plan just to show that they're not visible from the pedestrian area where those are being placed and ensure that we are capturing all of those utilities. And then the last 3 items are all the additional ones. A letter from the declarant. This one is not, Dear Heart, it is, no, this one, no, this is New Riverside Village. So the letter from the declarant of New Riverside Village needs to be provided for to ensure that they've met the declarations of covenants and restrictions. The final development plan needs to be finalized, and the signage all needs to come in through a signage permit. Sorry, I'm doing this without the staff report, but with my little scribble notes. I am happy to answer any questions that you have. The applicant, sorry, Ryan?
Yes.
Okay, Ryan is here on behalf of the project. We did a switch on both of the names on our applications here, so is here to speak on behalf of the project as well.
Thank you. I think, Charlie, you're in a time crunch, so do you?
Actually, it just solved itself.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Grandkid issue, but solved itself.
Okay. Well, I was going to let you go ahead and do your spiel. Do you want to go ahead and ask any questions?
No.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions for Katie before we open it to the applicant? The applicant, would you like to speak?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Do you want to drive the mouse, or do you want me to drive the mouse?
I will let you drive the mouse.
Okay.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Ryan Robinson with Reed Fuel Operating Company. Appreciate you hearing us tonight on our application for a certificate of appropriateness. We're incredibly excited about this project. We think this is probably going to be one of the best buildings that we're going to build, although I anticipate all the applicants that come before you probably say that. But this is a design for us that we've poured our heart and soul into, and definitely has that low country feel. We call it our low country building, and we think it's something that the town of Bluffton is really going to enjoy. So I'd like to go ahead and walk through a couple of the conditions this evening, if I may. So we'll go ahead and take a look first at let's see here. For the New Riverside PUD concept plan, section 1 is the landscaping. There's a comment on the required landscape buffer per the PZDSO. Refills works and eliminated part of the patio on the far corner of the building, and Katie can show that on the screen here. It's the top right corner to meet the requirement set back there off of Parkside Commons. Yep, so we meet the 8 foot as requested, so we've worked with staff to meet that requirement. Additionally, there was a comment and a condition related to the 8 foot buffer requirement along where the car wash elevation is of the building, as she's shown with the mouse here. The site design characteristics for this, with the property line being right there at the entrance of the car wash, with our required stack for the car wash depth, and then the drive aisle, the parking, and the sidewalk, we couldn't find the extra linear footage there to meet 8 foot. So we've worked with staff. What we've proposed there on the building is like a landscaping lattice feature on the wall of the building where the buffer is not met. And we really have done what we can to try to meet the intent of the code as far as a landscape buffer goes on that side of the building. So we hope that's something that's acceptable on the project. Continuing through on the landscape here, there was a comment about increasing the caliber of the trees. We could pick a tree specifically. We're more than inclined to do that, so that's something we'd happily accept.
Is this where the trellis is located, right here?
Yes,
the
that is
others?
correct. Yep, that's correct. Yes.
This is a trellis and this is a trellis?
It is, yes. We've got it on both sides. That's right.
So how big is that landscape buffer? Is there no landscape buffer on that side?
3 feet, I think.
I mean, because I have a simple solution for you. Make the building smaller. And you can do the 8 feet. How big is that buffer now? Do we know?
This is 3 feet. I have my wrong mouse. From here to here is 3 feet.
I mean, I understand, and maybe now's not the time, Madam Chair, but I understand that you want to fit the car wash and the stacking lane and have the proper radius and the proper parking and everything. But when it comes down to it, if we have a requirement of a buffer, because we're trying to make things in town look a certain way, then,
We should go about that.
you know,
Did you have something to add? Oh, I thought I heard you. Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, anything to piggyback on what he just said.
I was going to ask if because I didn't quite catch your first comment in response to the 8-foot foundation buffer. I understand the trellis was added over by the refuel. I think you said something about the car wash and the 8-foot.
So, yeah, the patio on the Parkway Commons side of the building, it had extended further down. We chopped that off and moved it further north to meet the 8-foot buffer requirement. So if Katie, you can show the mouse, the bottom right corner of the patio on the right side of the building.
Right there.
No, go back to this. Go back to the site plan.
Site plans, yeah.
I don't know why you guys let me drive.
So it would be the bottom right,
Here?
on the right side of the building. It'll be the bottom right corner of that patio. I keep going to the right. Thank you.
The other right, you know your direction.
All right, so it's this corner right here. The patio itself originally extended further south, kind of as I'm reflecting with the mouse here. From an aesthetic standpoint, it wasn't a huge difference to us. We pulled that up to make sure that we do meet, where'd the mouse go? There it is. The required 8 foot, which is right here. This separation requirement is, we do meet the buffer requirement at 8 feet. The other comment that I had added was on the left side of the building or the car wash side, the concern we have is how tight the property line is here with the property. So we do have a required queuing setup for our the vehicle coils in the concrete for license plate readers. There's a certain distance we have to have for the queuing, and we're at that minimum distance where it is right now. There's a clearance arm that's right here on the back side of the radius. So as you come through, you can basically fit 2 cars, and our control pod screen where you do your car wash is right here. You pull through your car wash and you're immediately into this drive aisle right here. So from a queuing standpoint, from the width of the drive, the width of the car wash, the width of the aisle here, the depth of the parking stall, the required ADA sidewalk, we're at 3 feet. So we're as tight as we can be without reducing the square footage of the building.
Katie, do they have to have 8 feet foundation around the car wash?
It is required on the front and side elevations. The rear does not require it, or areas that are specifically service access or there's another word, but it's essentially all of the things that make the utility/service areas, as long as it's not on the front elevation. It does not require that. I'm sorry, I don't know the exact language of this ordinance.
Well, to piggyback off of Charlie's, I'm having a lot of problems with this. I'm having a problem with cars backing up as cars are coming just out of the car wash. I'm having a problem that there's not 8 feet of foundation along that front edge of the car wash as it pertains to the facing the parking lot. I have a problem with it being 3 feet of foundation planting, which is nowhere close to 8 feet on that side. So I understand the tightness of that, absolutely. That's an uncomfortable place for you to be because that means majorly reworking the site to make it work. But I don't think that's.
Commissioner Duncan, I did find that language magically just here on the keyboard in front of me. It is 515.8D2 of the BZDSO, and it's 8 feet wide except where there is drive-through facilities are utilized, loading areas, or the utility on the rear end of the building. So the drive-through sides of this car wash would constitute the drive-through facilities. So both sides of that are exempt from requirement of the 8 feet. So the car wash portion of it has met that requirement. While it looks not funky, because that's not a nice word, but while it looks a little funky here, this is actually drainage stuff that you're seeing, and it is going to be sodded over. So this front of this car wash has, not 50, but it's like probably 30 feet of sod/landscaping in front of it. So it meets it on all of those. It actually meets it on every side that is required. So it's just the only location that is missing the 8-foot mark is this side here. And when he said he's discussed it with staff, I'm triggering thoughts in my head of what that means to me here is during the development plan process, this is something that was discussed with at least staff. Dan knows a little bit more of a potential way to mitigate some of the landscaping requirement on that side if you see that.
Madam Chair, if I may, and I'm sorry to do this because I do, based on experience, I've seen how helpful these sorts of discussions can be between the applicant and planning commission as we're going through the applicant's opportunity to present. But ultimately, I want to make sure that the applicant does get its full opportunity to present its position on this, allow time for questions, but from a due process standpoint to ensure that that opportunity is fully recognized by the applicant, if that's okay.
So let me get through this list and then we'll fire back.
I can keep going.
Okay, keep going. And then we'll circle back.
Yeah, so that's landscaping as far, and kind of the next section pertains particularly to the architecture features. I did have maybe a question or more of a statement regarding the cages up front, both for propane, and that is something that's delivered by the vendor. We don't directly control that as far as stocking it. We just have the key to get it in swap containers. I'm sure most folks are familiar with kind of how that process works. And then as well as the ice merchandisers we have out front. Those are a key part of the business for us. We sell a lot of ice, especially during the summers. This is a big thing for us, especially down here in Bluffton. I guess the question or maybe more of my statement is related to the specific comment from staff in that it discusses that the elevations noted that the exposed metal caging is not appropriate for elevations facing Highway 46. There was a lot of conversation in the presentation by staff relating to how large the landscape buffer is here on the north side of the property. Where's my mouse? Related to a large landscape buffer that's here. There's the path, existing wooded trees that are there, and then the landscape buffer is on the north side of that. So the distance, or the line of sight, I should say, from where these actual units are sitting are across a landscape buffer, parking, 2 drive aisles, a canopy, a huge buffer of trees. There's landscaping along the front here as well, but a huge buffer of trees, a park, or a trail for the park strip there, and then a larger buffer of trees. So I don't know, for us, the request of being able to be seen from 46 is something that's necessarily a valid comment. I'm happy to work with staff as needed to address that. I just want to make sure that we're doing it in a way that's realistic for us. We can come in and put in like maybe a picket fence or some sort of a low wall on the front. It kind of defeats the purpose of having the patio there. That's really, because we're trying to give it that open feel. And so by putting a wall in there at the front of the patio, it kind of encloses that in. But it's just something for us that we can work with staff on as needed. I just wanted to raise that point specifically. Let's see here. The other two comments I had are related to the pitched roof on the car wash, specifically over the storage unit area, and then also where all the equipment goes for the car wash. I'm happy to increase the roof pitch on that, so we'll accept that condition as requested by staff. And then the last item on here was related to the roof gable and the rooftop equipment. We'll work with staff to provide a roofing plan. We do have roofing equipment that's on top of the roof. All of our condensers, HVAC units, the fan through the hood, the makeup air unit, it's all on our roof. We do have a parapet that's there with like a lean-to roof on the outside of it as the elevation.
It's scary.
Yes. So this is a good example here. And the actual height of the roof is roughly where my mouse is here. It's actually below the fascia. And so there's a large parapet with a lean-to roof on the outside that helps shield all that. So we'll work with staff to provide a rooftop plan, and we do accept that comment as published. So I appreciate your time this evening. I'm happy to answer any questions and would really appreciate your approval on this process here for us to continue to move forward with building permits. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So going back to,
I do have an additional question on that corner, that's the southeast corner adjacent to Parkside Commons. Is that 8 feet off, that corner? Southeast corner. It may be it may just be close, the southeast corner or something.
Where are you?
Your mouse was right there.
Oh, this corner here?
Yep.
Yes.
That is 8 feet off? Okay. I'm still not convinced that the trellis is enough to...
Well, I was gonna say, how does the trellis help? What does that mean?
I mean, I will say that if you have Caroline adjustment going up, it looks landscaping at a higher level, so it can help break up the facade of the building, make it get a little nicer architectural feel. I don't know that it adds any apparent depth. 3 feet's pretty narrow.
But on that side, that's the side where there's windows?
Yeah, that's my issue with it too, is kind of, I get that at the back of the building, we don't necessarily have the 8-foot requirement, but that elevation is not the back elevation from my point of view. I think the Parkside Commons reads as the rear, given the extent of blank wall. So I think if we're going to consider the 3-foot planting bed somewhere, the architecture should also have that be articulated as the rear elevation and not feel like we're getting not enough planting on one of the side elevations and also having a separate issue that's, like, can't use rear to get away with both things, I guess.
I'm not sure I understood, Lydia. Are you suggesting that the Parkside is treated as the backside of the building and the architecture doesn't address it?
I'm saying if we're gonna, I guess the requirements that we have 8 feet of buffer everywhere except for the backside of the building, is that correct?
The requirement is, I'm sorry, I'm flipping through your staff report. Shall be maintained between any structure and any parking or drive area except for loading areas and areas where drive-through facilities are utilized.
Oh, so it's not, it has nothing to do with the back of the building? It's all right. Okay, sorry.
I read utilities, but that was utilized is the word I'm looking for. Sorry.
This might be, if I may, a little bit out. Can you go to that first diagram you've got? The very first diagram that looks like that. Thank you. When I look at all those parking spots, I count like 39 parking spots. Now, I think maybe the ones on the extreme left or the bottom might be shared spots. By the master plan stuff that you just sent me, for a 5,000 square foot building, you'd only need 20 spots. Is there a reason you're I mean, because you're cramming in some of the landscaping, you even said about, you're a little concerned about the turning for the car wash. Why do you need that many spots?
Yeah, absolutely great question. I'll have to refer to staff a little bit. I believe we've worked with staff not only for on-site parking, but also shared parking for the overall PUD. And we were close to the number that was required. There's some brain fog.
You're required to have 20 spaces.
Oh, it's 20 spaces.
Right. And I think you have 20
On-site spaces.
And this diagram right now is 39. Now, there might be some shared, I get that. I'm just, is that a way to solve the planting, your turnaround space for your car wash?
Can they use that shared as part of their count, or does their parking all have to be contained on the lot?
The shared that's on the road to the south, they can use. In fact, they're required to get a letter from the declarant saying that those parking spaces that are off-site parking spaces are assigned to refuel versus assigned somewhere else.
Then what he's saying could happen, you could reduce the amount on-site spaces to perhaps help gain the buffer that you need.
Just something to look at.
I think it's a great idea. And
Get those 8 spaces out of there.
Yeah, because we're allowed to utilize, and in our count right now, we are utilizing, as I'm indicating here with the mouse on the screen, this shared parking that's actually on street.
That's 8 spaces.
We're counting those in our overall parking count.
It would give you a little bit more room for your surge for your car wash and the buffering, planting buffer. But again, just something to think about.
I just have a question because I don't know the answer, I'm just curious. Does, under the canopy, does that count for any type of parking, like a percent or anything? No? Okay, I was just wondering.
People do
like that
there.
switch.
I know, but I just didn't know if it was like a percentage what people could do.
The other thing we have to look at is setting a precedent. So if we let you have less than 8 foot in your buffer, then that's a challenge we're dealing with here. So it's not just looking and going, okay, lattice makes sense here. It can be a problem.
Yeah, because then everybody would want to do that, and that's.
And that leads into the other one, which is the ice machine and the propane. It's the same situation. We've approved other gas stations in the area, and their ice is inside because they couldn't make it work outside where it was properly screened and that type of. And I understand what you're saying, but you got to look at, we have to look at the bigger context too, so.
If they moved it to where those parking spots are, would that be an acceptable place, or is it not allowed to
Too
be
far away because it's.
caged?
Can't see it. For the surface of the store, is that too far?
It's, for us, all of the square footage inside is accounted for, so I don't necessarily have the space to put them inside, so it would be I guess a debate of do we have them or do we not, so we would want them, so we would put them over on the side. Yeah.
So it would work functionally for you if you put them on the
correct.
side, it would be okay?
Yes.
Would that work with things
That would meet the requirement. The other option is, the ice could move to the side if they needed the propane closer to the door for security issues and install a knee wall on that side that's not under the porch. Not at the microphone. So this area right here is under the porch roof line. This area is not under porch roof line, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
And so if
Go there.
There we go.
There we go,
So
to the right.
this area here is set back a little ways. If there was a portion of wall that came out so that if the ice faced sideways, where this steps out, there could be a portion of the building that continues on, similar to how you see in some grocery stores where the cart's tied back in behind that knee wall. And on this side, it could do the same, or the ice machines could move towards the side, and that propane, or all of it can move to the side really, but this area here, a little knee wall right there would be adequate screening for that, because the propane tank is going to be less big than ice cooler.
But are they like stacked up?
Yes, it's still the cage, but it's the size of the cages. This one is smaller than the 2 ice containers next to each other in width and scale there. So I don't know, something to consider.
So where are we?
We're in Bluffton, South Carolina.
I have a couple of additional landscape comments.
I'm sorry.
On architecture and site design, that's.
Well, I was struggling a lot when I was reading on it because I don't have a roof plan, and that would have probably helped me understand what's happening.
Why don't we have a roof plan?
That's where I'm struggling with, is not understanding where some of these roofs are coming in and out. Specifically, the parapet wall with the faux roof. I guess that's what I've been more troubled with. Look at that with the two gable ends. That view on the left elevation is just troublesome to me. I don't know what the solution is per se, but also the height of the building, is there a reason it's so tall? Like the proportion of it, I guess, because there's a lot of space above all the windows and banding and.
How the mechanicals?
No, I mean like
No.
the wall's tall, not necessarily the roof, but the wall section. So is there like a height requirement for something?
We have a high ceiling inside, and then just to have the roof gable, it's a high peak.
So the inside, is there a reason or a minimum that you're required to do for the interior ceiling height?
We have 11-foot ceiling grid inside with some cloud features that hang down. You can't see them inside the windows unless you're looking at an angle, but it's 11-foot grid inside. So it is a very high ceiling.
Well, even if it's 11 feet, you've got, 18 and some change for your plate height. So I'm just wondering why the plate height of the roof couldn't come down some so there's not so much wall space. I didn't know if there's something driving it on the inside that makes it that tall.
Not necessarily. Just from an aesthetic standpoint, our architect, we just go for height. We just stretch the building out a little bit.
Then it leaves you a lot of wall blank space, and then it makes your windows look even squattier.
You both said that.
You know what I'm saying. So I think that's where I'm struggling with that. Liddy, back me up. What are your, what say you?
I agree with that. I'm struggling with the roof lines on that same elevation, just in general, the composition of that elevation. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Katie, but can we have signs on two sides maximum?
Yes.
So I think when you take the signs off, the proportion gets worse on how tall it is. And when we can't have the sign on every gable end. Just struggling with the proportion of the overall height of it, I guess. There's a weird forehead amount of space above all the windows. It's another story almost. And I get the parapet and, concealing the roof equipment, but I wonder if there's a way to still be able to do that without an 18.5+ foot tall exterior wall. Or if the windows were raised higher, given that you have an 11-foot ceiling, if the windows were raised to 10 or something. Right.
Because right now, even with the height, it's a 2-story building because you're in an 18-foot plate height, essentially, or greater. It's just the proportions are off.
Is this a standard design that you use in your buildings?
It's a good question. It's not perfectly the same across all of our stores, but it's in concept a general design. Yeah, it's our low country design is what we call it. And so it's very similar to the store that we are building in Beaufort, that we actually are trying to open tomorrow. But so if you'd like to come by and visit, you can see it firsthand. And we've got a couple of stores upstate a little bit, Myrtle Beach area, that we're building a similar design. So, for us, the canopy is something that's trademarked by Refuel, and we hope customers that are across the state recognize that canopy and know that it's Refuel, and we're trying to do a similar identity with the building as well.
So the canopy over the gas pumps.
That's what
the other issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, we haven't gotten there yet, but
Can I speak to the landscaping as it pertains to this 18-foot tall blank facades? One of the things that I'm seeing from the landscape side is almost exclusively around the facade of this building is like deciduous and perennials. And so in addition to having these large blank facades, you don't have anything that's going to really be of substance
to cover them up.
To screen them, to soften them.
Soften, that's a good word.
Yeah. So I would highly encourage, particularly where you do have these unarticulated large wall faces, evergreen, larger options. Underneath the windows, I don't have a problem with it being shorter. I still would shy heavily away from going deciduous. The perennials out front, I think, as they pertain to the 46 side, I don't have a major issue with, because you do have evergreen actually in the buffer itself. But the other sides that face Parkside and the New Riverside Drive really need to be evergreen in nature.
Anybody else have any comments to add to what we've been discussing so far? Okay.
As long as we're going to the canopy at some point, and I hate that it's trademarked.
I know. So
I do have one more comment, and this is really not a holding up permitting issue. Your plant selection that's been selected works better when you're 8A, when you're more north of here. These are, I'm afraid they're going to struggle here. And this may be what you've done in Beaufort as well, and I'm a little concerned because these are, for most of these plants, on the very bottom edge of what they can do, and I'm a little nervous about them. I've used Ilex Glauber before, and it's not even performed. It should be performing well here, and I don't see it doing that either. So I'm a little concerned with
I'd agree with that. I've tried 3 eastern redbuds in my yard, and it didn't work.
I'm hopeful, because there's a lot of existing canopy over
Maybe
here.
that'll help.
They're in
Maybe
shade,
that'll help.
as long as they're well irrigated. I actually think that could be really
That'd
pretty,
be great,
especially
yeah,
in the spring. Mhm.
one of the other items on the architecture, you said you would change the 2 and 12 pitch roofs. You agree to that?
Yes, on the car wash, yes.
Okay, so then the next thing for the architecture would be that gas canopy, the curved canopy, which is the signature. Go ahead, anybody.
Sure.
I refer to the architect.
I have a fundamental issue that it's curved, but even outside of that, if you took a tangent line to the curve, that is definitely less than 412. So I don't see that as being a pitched roof at all, per the way that we define pitched roofs. And I don't think we're allowed to have flat roofs. So,
Not without a pediment.
yeah. And then I also don't think that curves are really appropriate for low country as a separate thing, but I don't even think that, like, slope-wise, that we're meeting the slope, yeah.
So have you done other types of canopies, or is it only the curved?
No, we have. This is the preferred, this is our trademark canopy, and you'll see this the most with us, but we do have in our arsenal some other canopies that we've built. Now, we try to stay away from just the standard rectangular, Panaflex that just doesn't, I would assume the commission probably doesn't like that either. I've got a store that we're working on right now up in Charleston, specifically near Folly Beach, that's like a gable design. It is a 2 dispenser versus a 1 dispenser, so we'd have to take a look at how we would design that. And then we also have kind of just like a lean-to design that we do closer to North Carolina, a little bit above the coast. So we do have some alternatives. I need to make sure that they're 412 or meet the 412 requirements that's been expressed. But we do have potentially some other options without going with a fully custom canopy.
Does that satisfy?
I think we need to see
Well, no, I think we need to see it, but as far as that they do
Yes.
have things that they
Yes.
can change it to.
Right.
So it's not a hard no. Okay?
Did the windows cause either you or Lydia heartburn as they are also horizontal in
Yes.
orientation?
Yes, but I think with like what Lydia said is since this thing is so tall, I think you can play with some proportions each, I don't know, if the thing comes down and then the windows, we like more vertical versus horizontal, typically down.
For glass, but not for blank walls.
But not for blank walls. I'm not sure what that is, the answer to that is, yeah, it's just that we prefer the more vertical orientation for windows. Is that what you're asking?
It is, thank you. I pulled up this, sorry,
sign standards, and this has no bearing on much. However, the sign standards for New Riverside Village in the Article 9 design standard, IX 9, it is a maximum of 160 square feet. They are permitted 2 sign types, but the wall-mounted signs can be distributed at their liberty. So it could be
As long as it's at 100 and...
I believe that's the case. I have not reviewed signs outside of the historic district in 4 years, so I found it, and that's how I read it, but Jordan Holloway is the one who reviews all the signs. My understanding of it, though, is that it's 160 square feet, flat signs, wall-mounted, can't exceed that, and then the percentage per wall face can't be exceeded, and that number loses me, but...
I know the sign permit is a separate process, but I think if you're going to lean on the signs to make the architecture acceptable, then I would like to at least know what the dimensions are so that we can confirm that it would comply. Otherwise, I think if you can't, for whatever reason, if it doesn't work out to have a sign on all those gables, I think we need another detail, an architectural detail added.
Okay.
Well, it's too, like we brought up earlier with the blue marble about what if it wasn't the blue marble anymore? It was something else, and they take all the signs off, then you've got these blank walls. So like Lydia said, think about the architecture and some kind of detail that can help in those areas. And not just rely on the signage that may not be approved.
Okay.
Okay. Need a temperature reading on everybody.
And Madam Chair, again, you've got those 3 options to approve with conditions tonight, and also based off of the number of comments and the request for detailed roof plans and some of the other revisions and the discussion about the parking, the potential removal of some parking spaces or the use of some of those along either Parkside or New Riverside. There's also that option to table if the applicant agrees to pursue that and if the Planning Commission is interested in that option.
What is everyone thinking? Table?
If the applicant is agreeable.
Yeah.
I mean, just to summarize it, I mean, we're wanting to see a roof plan. We're wanting to address the buffer on the one side and see if the parking spaces even need to be there to help you out. And the mass and scale and possible vertical orientation.
So are you?
We have some work to do. We'd love to come back and present a plan that aligns with your expectations, if you'll allow us that.
Do you have enough information from us?
I believe so. I can work with staff as well.
Do you have enough information from us?
Can I run through my understanding of it real quick, just to make sure I'm not misguided?
Sure.
So they're going to work towards the 8-foot foundation plan throughout the east elevation, the Washington Hawthorne. They are okay with changing that to either a bigger one or a different one. The propane and ice coolers, they're going to figure out a way to either screen it or move it to that left side elevation, which is the one towards the parking spaces, which may or may not exist. The 2 and 12 roof pitch on the car wash is going to be increased to a 4 and 12. The curved gas canopy is going to be modified to preferably a pitched roof, potentially a shed is what it sounded like from what I was hearing. That being said, it will be a 4 and 12 pitch. The service yard utilities are going to be shown on a roof plan, which is going to show the depth of all those parapets that are being shown there. I will send you an email with this too, so I'm talking fairly quickly.
I got a good memory, luckily.
The letter from the department, the final development plan and the signage, they're okay with all of those things. They're potentially going to lose some of that parking on the left elevation because they're going to have the additional parking that is on the rear. They'll still be able to meet their parking counts, which is a requirement of the development plan, but they're also going to take a look at those plants to make sure that some more of them are not deciduous.
Evergreen.
They're going to be evergreen of some kind, so they can still be deciduous as long as they're evergreen deciduous trees.
That's not the same thing.
That's not the same thing. Coniferous, help me.
There is semi-evergreen, but it's
So they're going to be evergreen. I'm gonna just cross out that word.
I have that on here.
You're going to take a look at the height of the walls plate to see if it can be reduced a little bit in order to reduce the number of long unarticulated blank facades. And there's a cloud ceiling, guys.
Vertical on the windows.
Vertical if possible on the
Horizontal
windows, or at
and
least
vertical.
square if they can possibly come up with that. By either breaking up the windows or adding money patterns or adding another division, something along those lines that potentially will help. Did I cover everything? Have I missed something, Kathleen? I see yours.
I didn't say anything about it, but I did, I'm adding something. Warm LED lighting, 3,000.
I have another one on that front. All the lights mounted to the building, it'd be great if they all had the same color temperature, preferably 2,700 to 3,000 at max.
So can I ask a question about that? We're more like 5,700 from an industry standard standpoint, at least when it comes to the site. Can we provide a warmer temperature on the building itself, obviously inside, but on the exterior of the building for the fixtures?
That's what I mean, just the ones that are attached
Okay.
to the structure.
No, I want the site lighting to also be warm. I don't want it to be 5,700, so that's way too cool.
Yeah, it's a very white.
It is
Yes.
very blue.
There is a regulation in the ZDSO in this case that gives them a range of color. Currently, it was meeting it. It is something that can be considered there.
I just think the decorative lights that are attached to the building is gonna be very odd if you have some that are 4,000 and some that are 2,700 and some, That's my same point, the site lighting. They lead to y'all.
The other architectural thing was the side elevations and how that roof that disguises the mechanical,
Parapet.
the parapet,
She covered that. She had that
what
one.
that looks.
Well, not just what's
Just
in
the
the
way it looks
parapet, it's the
like.
fact that it almost looks like two separate buildings with a short roof.
What we'll do, I'll do a sketch, my architect already has one, that's how we did the ISO drawings on this. We'll do a 3D zoom back kind of up in the air so you can really see the way that the roof lays, not only with the actual 2D roof plan, but we'll do a full 3D model. And you can see that, I'll have that available for you at our next meeting.
I think it might help too, that'd be great. I think it would help too on the left east face Parks and Commons elevation, which I think is maybe what Amanda was speaking to, is it is odd that the parapet roof is in the same plane as the gable. And I don't necessarily love it on the right side, but the right side, at least it's articulated as two separate masses,
and
that
it's
so
in
the
two
plane
different
is broken.
planes.
Yes. So I think if we can break the plane between the short roof and the tall roof, that would go a long way on that elevation.
Yeah, because I think, because it's on the right west face, it's in a distance. But on this other one, it's just the same thing. So yes, that would probably solve that if they could articulate.
Well, that's, you can see as it's coming, the problem is that building is a reflection of the one that is here in Bluffton. But yeah, as Katie's indicating, that elevation there is kind of what you're referring to, where it's all on one plane.
I guess that's why our roof plan would help us be able to figure out how that can work.
Of course.
Might be a bad idea to meet offline.
What's that?
Is it something that a couple of us could consult with them at a later time, or no? With the
Meet with
applicant?
staff and one or
Meet
two
with
planning
staff.
commission members with them to get a better product and bring it back here, especially the ones that have architectural minded. I don't see why they can't.
No, I mean, that's, obviously, anything that you would provide would be suggestions and.
Right, it's
Hopefully
not
y'all-
approval, it's just a suggestion.
Hopefully, the architects who would be providing such services would be okay if the planning commission went against them and some of their recommendations. I think that'd be the only thing I would be concerned about. So,
I just, we're just murmuring up here, but I think it would be a good idea for a couple to get together with you in between now and the next time it comes up to us.
Just for your information, Lydia and I both work on architecture, so that's why we are more focused on that, and Kathleen's landscape, so Lloyd landscape architecture, so.
And I'm AC.
And
which
he
is
knows
why-
everything, and he was a youth pastor or something at one time.
No,
So-
AC. I don't have the roof plan.
No, you were some youth somebody sometime.
What's the location of the place in Beaufort?
It's on the corner of Trask and Paris Island Gateway, kind of as you're coming into town there.
Route 21 as you head out towards the air station.
They built those new.
As the DOT signs off on my turn lane in the morning, we'll be open by lunch tomorrow. We're ready, we
Doing a
are,
ribbon cutting?
it'll be in a month, but yes, we are ready to go.
When's lunch?
1 o'clock, I'll see
Are
you
you doing
there.
a Wake Forest?
There's no conflict of interest there.
Okay, so you're willing to table,
Yes.
and you understand what we're suggesting?
Yes.
Katie's got what we're suggesting. Is there any?
One more question.
One more thing.
That's it. Okay. Along with what Kathleen was saying in terms of height for plantings, I think for again, that left elevation where there's a really large expanse of like siding, I would suggest you either add more fenestration or tall, like actual tall plantings, not shrubs that are low and turn up or something that's vertical. And same thing on the completely blank elevation of the car wash, if we could get some height to the landscaping there. Or fenestration, but if you don't want to do that, I would take height for landscaping.
I see what you're saying, okay.
And I would think of it kind of like as a mature size of the plant, 50% of height coverage.
50% mature size.
50% of the height of the facade of the wall covered by plant at mature size.
Okay.
That would be at least enough. And under the windows, like drop it under windows, because that's a pet peeve of mine, when they start covering windows.
Yeah. Okay, so then can I get a motion? Someone.
I think Rich is about to make a motion.
No, I'm not making a motion. You are. I've made a number of them today. Go ahead, your turn.
Well, somebody else can do it.
I tried.
Lydia, you want to?
I'll do it. I'll lay it out. My last
Oh,
one.
this is Kathleen's last
Bon
one.
voyage, friends. I make a motion to table
That you're not going to be
the
here.
refuel that I will not be here to look at.
I'll second that.
Do you have any further discussion? Thank you, Kathleen.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Thank you, Kathleen.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
We
See
can't
you
untable
soon.
it unless the person made the motion next week. So it's forever.
Okay, so we have discussion. Katie has a discussion item.
Sorry, I have 2 points of discussion, real quick, I promise they will be brief. The first one is that I'd just like to introduce Angie over here. She is our intern. She's the growth management intern, and she's been doing a wonderful job, so if you guys have seen comments, some of them may have come from her.
We are so sorry.
Even if our name is on it, because that's what interns get, is our name on that information.
Some of those too.
Yeah, it's great, right? So she's doing a wonderful job. Just wanted to say, hey, she did make it to this long meeting tonight, so thank you for bearing with that. And then the second item is already been spoiled. It is Kathleen's last meeting, so I just wanted to say thank you, Kathleen, for all of the time that you've put into all of these meetings. We have had some marathoners in the last few years that you've been on here. We appreciate all of your work that you've put into it because you have an eye for detail, definitely, especially when it relates to the landscaping, which is obviously makes a little sense there. But she has been on the DRC and on the Planning Commission for her whole term, and we thank you very, very much. Carrie's got a little swag bag for you so that you can keep representing the town of Elkhorn. Thank you so much for all the time and effort you put into this. So we appreciate you. We will see you at the meetings, but not in that chair necessarily for the, you can do for now.
Comment.
Right?
3 minutes.
3 minutes.
its own way, and I'll be
On
nice.
each agenda item, right?
Okay,
Thank you so much. That's all I have.
Thank you, Jackie.
do you want to do the motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.